If you're at the point of trying to make that big decision about whether or not you should buy the AeroGarden Farm, I wanted to share some of the things that I wish I had known before I bought mine, as well as sharing why I'm getting rid of mine after about 8 years. So it seems kind of crazy, but this was actually my first AeroGarden. I was operating under the go big or go home mantra, and I just figured, well, I knew I wanted to grow food, so I might as well get the biggest model because then I could grow the most amount of food, right? Except maybe not. And that's kind of what I want to share with you guys today. I'm not saying I wouldn't have bought the AeroGarden Farm at the time. I had my heart set on it, but I probably would have got a little different model than the one that I did get, and maybe I would have looked a little bit harder for other alternatives. So before I get into all the things maybe I don't like so much of it, let's just flip the camera and take a quick look at it. I will tell you, it is dirty, it is a mess. I have not used it for a little bit, which is another reason I'm getting rid of it. So it does have a nice little screen, kind of shows you where the water's at. There's even an old sticky trap stuck on there. Honestly, if you're having issues with any pests, those things are great. Then you have the 2 grow bowls and the lights, and those ones can be raised and lowered. And now let's talk about what this is and what it isn't. So the whole 24 holes thing is bull. I'm gonna have to beep that out. It's one of my pet peeves in general with AeroGarden. They tell you how many holes they have. You think that's how many holes you should plant, and it's so not. The fact that the AeroGarden Farm has 24 holes and comes with enough pods to fill all of them does not mean that you should. Which also means that you can't grow that much because you're not growing 24 things at a time. Lots of different reasons for that. Number one reason, there's not enough space for things to grow that closely. The way that the holes are laid out does not leave enough space for the plants to have the space they need in order to have air circulation and all those other good things that are going to prevent pests and diseases. You're not growing 24 things at a time, or at least I would not recommend to try and grow 24 things at a time because it's just going to lead to disaster later on. And I know this because I tried this and it was a disaster. And the thing I hate is having to clean these decks. They actually pop apart, so the gray part pops out of the white part, and you can see on the back there are all these clips, which are a friggin' nightmare to get off. I have broken a couple of them trying to get it apart, and if you don't take this thing apart and clean it properly, then you're going to end up with algae, and it's just part of keeping the unit clean. It is very hard to get into all these nooks and crannies and to clean it and to get the thing back together again. It is not something that I like to do, and honestly, because of that, I didn't even clean it as much as I should, which is not a good thing. So one thing that does make cleaning a little bit easier is this tubing, and it was obviously there when I bought the unit. I stuffed it in one of these end cabinets and promptly forgot about it for many years. What it is meant to do is you can attach it over onto the pump, and then you can reverse the pump, and that will help push all the water out so you don't have to pick it up and do the crazy walk to try and dump the water in the sink, which I've also done and spilled yucky water all over the place. The other thing I should mention is there is an app, but it's pretty crappy. So you can go into the app. All the app does is show you the exact same things that I can see on that screen right there. So if I'm not home, yes, I could raise and lower the lights, but that's kind of the thing you want to be there in order to know that you're not crushing your plants or anything. I don't know. Honestly, the app escapes me on the point. So the other thing I don't like about it is so low. I am sitting on the floor in order to film this, and I'm like right at the height that it is. So if you have any mobility issues or just don't feel like sitting on the floor or crouching down to tend to your plants, then it's a bit of a pain in the butt. At one point I had contemplated doing a whole DIY, how to have a cabinet to raise it up. The fact that it is so low is a definite negative for me. Having to crunch down to get in there, not one of my favorite things. The other AeroGarden models, they're made that you're probably going to put them on a counter or on a shelf, so they are higher up. We have already covered that you should not be planting all of the holes, so if you're not using the holes, you need to cover them. And the main reason for that is that when you have water and nutrients and light, you have a very, 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 very good chance of getting algae. And we want to do something to prevent that. So the hole covers help to remove as much light as possible from the equation. So these are the AeroGarden branded ones. I bought them just to try them out in case anyone was asking. And because there's 24 holes on this thing, you need a lot of these. And it does not come with any of those. You do not need to get these ones. There are 3D printed ones that you can get on places like Etsy, or if you have a 3D printer, you could do them yourselves. Anything you can cover the holes with. A lot of people use golf balls. So the fact that you shouldn't be planting all the holes, and that the AeroGardens don't come with hole covers, which doesn't even make people realize this, and I think that was one of the big things I didn't know. Like when you get it and it's got all the holes, you think you're going to put plants in them. You don't think that you need to cover them if you're not using them. So I struggled with algae a lot in the early days. And truthfully, in this, if I was to be growing something big like a tomato where I'd be taking advantage of the height, then I would be doing one on one side, one on the other, which is not the 24 plants that were kind of advertised. As I mentioned, I have had this thing for 8 years, so I don't want to make it seem like it is all bad, because it is not. I have used this to grow quite a bit of food, just not as much as I perhaps thought I was going to when I bought the unit. I do love the fact that those lights can go up and down and like raise and lower them. I love that I can do that because it really lets you get nice and close to those seedlings when they are tiny, and then to continually raise up the lights as the plants grow. Not a lot of units that I've seen really do that, especially on the bigger units. That is definitely a plus. I like the fact that there are the two separate grow bowls, so you could run different pH. So on one side, if you had a tomato, on one side you had a lettuce or something, you could run the different pH that would be best suited to those plants. So that is another plus. So the other thing that I love that AeroGarden has, and this is not just for the AeroGarden farm, but this is the biggest one, is the seedling starting deck. So I'm pretty sure it's 81 seedlings that I can start in here. And I can tell you that I have used this many, many, many years. I love using the AeroGarden farm for starting seedlings. I'll put a link up to the video that I did on this and using it and why I think it's so great. Now that I'm getting rid of the AeroGarden farm, I need to get one of these starting decks for one of my other AeroGardens. They're just great when you've, left it a bit late, or maybe just decide you need a couple more plants, and you can get so many started. Now, the one thing I'll call out is they kind of have built-in little baskets, because the intention is not for the plants to stay in here very long. Another thing that's cool is these units are stackable. There's 3 sizes. There's the smallest one that gives 1 inch of grow height. This one is the medium one, the plus, that gives the 2 feet of grow height. And then there is the biggest one, the XL, which gives 3 feet of grow height. If I could go back in time, what I would buy is the AeroGarden Farm 12XL. So it's only 1 grow bowl. It gives it 3 feet of height, and that would be the highest grow height that I've seen on one of these systems. If you've seen one that gives you more than 3 feet, let me know down in the comments below. But that would be what I would rather get. Now again, you're not going to be growing 12 things in it, but just to have that extra height to grow pretty much a full determinate tomato would be fantastic. And I still might get one of those in the future. And the reason that I am getting rid of this now, apart from all those things that I brought up, is I need to move this out. And then I'm going to move my rise garden, which is over there, back over here. And the reason for that is the rise garden has such better use of space. It also, on the model that I have, can grow 24 things, but it's growing 12 and more space than this is growing 24. And Rise Garden just came out with some newer models that I want to check out. If you're interested in the Rise Garden, I have a link below where you can save some money. So hopefully all this information helps to make your buying decision a little bit easier, and you can decide if the AeroGarden farm is right for you. And if you want to know more about how the farm compares to the Rise Garden, you can check out this video over here.